Hi, my name is Will Manke,
And I'm Sam Hanslip.
and for our senior project for ASC, we decided to construct two microbial fuel cells. Now, basically, what that is a contraption or system that converts the energy produced by microbes in soil to electrical energy. Before we get started, Mr. Barrett wanted us to let you juniors know that as you guys are starting to pick your groups for your senior project, that you need to choose them wisely.
And make sure you and your group members work well together and that you have compatible schedules and that you don't make groups that are too big because that can lead to a lot of other issues as well.
In this presentation, we are going to discuss what a microbial fuel cell is and how it works, why you would use one, the goals of our project, our construction process, and our final results.
These are our two completed microbial fuel cells. Each one consists of two containers, a cathode and an anode, that are connected by a salt bridge that we made in a compression fitting. In each chamber goes an electrode, and each electrode is connected by an alligator clamp to a 220 ohm resistor. Into our cathode chamber, we have aquarium tubing that keeps the saltwater solution in the cathode aerated by an aquarium pump. In each of our anode chambers, we have a mud sample. In one of them, we decided to use riverbed mud, and in the other one, we decided to use compost. So what really goes down in a microbial fuel cell? Well, this is a visual representation of a similar variation to our own microbial fuel cell. Essentially, the soil in the anode chamber acts as the home environment to the bacteria used to create electricity. When the electrode is buried in the soil, the bacteria plant themselves onto the carbon cloth and multiply, creating a biofilm on the electrode. When the bacteria begin digesting the organic matter in the soil, they produce protons and electrons, which are placed back into the environment. However, the electrons are placed directly onto the electrode in the anode chamber, which then carries these electrons through an external circuit to the cathode. This flow of electrons is what provides us with the reading on our multimeter that we call our results. As for the protons created by the microbes, they flow through the salt bridge, a selectively permeable membrane, to the electrode in the cathode chamber, where they meet the electrons that have made their way through the circuit. Here, the two combine with each other and oxygen provided through the aquarium pump to create water.
Alternative energy is clean, efficient, and renewable, which is why it is imperative that we as a society make the effort to change from using fossil fuels to methods that produce clean energy, such as biochemical energy. China and the United States alone are responsible for nearly half of the world's carbon dioxide emissions. This statistic alone is horrifying, considering that these are two of the world's superpowers, which means that their carbon emissions aren't going to drop anytime soon. Both countries have very small renewable energy sectors due to the current high costs of producing alternative energy, but in the long run, these prices will go down, while the prices of fossil fuels will go up due to their limited availability.
The primary goals of our project were to explore the methods of creating alternative energy, specifically biochemical energy, and to create a fuel cell that produced an electrical output to determine the practicality that a fuel cell might have on a larger scale.
The first part of our procedure was to obtain two containers that we would use as the anode and cathode chambers. The next step was to drill holes in the lids, which the electrodes would go through. Another hole was drilled to facilitate the air pump tubing. Next, we drilled 3/4 of an inch holes in the sides of each chamber, which the salt bridge would adhere to. We then glued the ends of the compression fitting around each hole and waited 10 hours for it to dry. After this, we made our electrodes by gluing copper wire around the edge of 5 by 5 centimeter carbon cloth squares with nickel epoxy. The next part was to create the salt bridge, which would act as our semi-permeable membrane. We added auger and salt to boiling water, then stirred until smooth. We then unscrewed the compression fitting from the end pieces, covered one end with aluminum foil, and poured the solution into the tube. We covered it with plastic wrap and placed it in the refrigerator overnight. The next day, we screwed it back into the end pieces. Our fuel cell was then ready to be assembled. The last part was adding mud and the salt solution to their designated chambers, as well as attaching alligator clips to each electrode with a 220 ohm resistor in the middle. An aquarium pump with tubing was then inserted into the cathode chamber to aerate the water.
As you can see by our results, our first microbial fuel cell, which ran from microbes found in riverbed mud, took a few days to produce any energy. Obviously the numbers are very small, too small to have any practical use, but this was expected as this is a small-scale model. The first fuel cell peaked with an output of 0.016 volts and gave out an average of about 0.007 volts over the first 30 days. Our second fuel cell, which ran off of the microbes found in compost, showed to be much more effective, despite having a slow start similar to the first fuel cell. Our second fuel cell peaked at about 0.036 volts and produced an average of 0.015 volts over the first 30 days.
In conclusion, the two microbial fuel cells that we constructed both produced energy and the results that we expected to get.
And given that these are on small-scale models, if they're projected onto a much larger scale, then the energy produced by larger microbial fuel cells would be much more significant and applicable to the real world.
And as our population has increased substantially over the last 50 years, so has the use of fossil fuels such as coal and natural gas, which has caused global warming to become a major issue in our time. And after constructing our two microbial fuel cells, along with doing significant research, we have learned that this is one of the many ways of producing alternative energy that is both clean, efficient, and reliable.
That's just about it that we have about the microbial fuel cells, but before we go, we'd like to thank both my parents and Sam's parents for the support that they've given us, places to do our research, and the materials that they provided for us.
And we would also like to thank Mr. Barrett for all of his advice and for being a great teacher for the past 2 years.